Now we come to 35.6060 on page 1149. Buddha said, "Monks, I will teach you the Dhamma for the full understanding of all clinging or attachment." Listen. And what, monks, is the Dhamma for the full understanding of all clinging or attachment? Independence on the I informs, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the tree is contact. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. Seeing thus the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards the I, towards forms, towards I consciousness, towards I contact, towards feeling. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, the mind is liberated. With its deliverance, he understands, clinging has been understood by me. Similarly, independence on ear and sounds. Ear consciousness arises. Independence on nose and smells. Independence on tongue and taste, body and touch, mind and thoughts. Consciousness arises. The meeting of the tree is contact. With contact as conditioned, feeling comes to be. And then seeing thus the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards the six sense bases. Experiencing revulsion, it becomes dispassionate. And through dispassion, the mind is liberated. This is the Dhamma for the full understanding of all clinging. So why the Buddha says, from this you can understand clinging. Firstly, you see, all these conditions, they are like a chain. For the eye, there must be forms in front of the eye. And then the consciousness arises. And then the meeting of the tree is contact. And then, because of contact, you pay attention and feeling arises. And then, because of feeling, you have pleasant feeling, you have unpleasant feeling, and you have neutral feeling. Pleasant feeling, when you experience, there's a tendency to cling to it, to lust for it, to crave for it, to want to experience it again. When you have unpleasant feeling, painful feeling, there is revulsion. You want to get far away from it. You don't want to experience it again. So, if you understand that this craving arises from conditions, arising from all these conditions, and it gives you suffering. And the suffering is because of the six sense bases. When you have the six sense bases and you have contact, then because of feeling, then suffering comes to be. So understanding this, then learned disciple, he experiences revulsion towards the source of suffering, which is the six sense basis. And then when he becomes disenchanted, then that is followed by dispassion and he becomes liberated. 35.63 at Savatthi. Then the Venerable Nikaya approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, "Venerable Sir, it is said, lone dweller, lone dweller. In what way, Venerable Sir, is one a lone dweller, and in what way is one dwelling with a partner?" The Buddha said, "Nikaya, there are forms cognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk seeks delight in them, welcomes them, and remains holding to them, delight arises. When there is delight, there is infatuation. When there is infatuation, there is bondage. Bound by the fetter of delight, Nikaya, a monk is called one dwelling with a partner. There are, Nikaya, sounds cognizable by the ear. So similarly, they are desirable, lovely, enticing, etc. Odors cognizable by the nose, taste cognizable by the tongue, tactile objects cognizable by the body, thoughts cognizable by the mind that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk seeks delight in them, welcomes them and remains holding to them, delight arises. When there is delight, there is infatuation. When there is infatuation, there is bondage. bound by the fetter of delight. A monk is called one dwelling with a partner. Nikaya, even though a monk who dwells thus resorts to forests and groves, to remote lodgings where there are few sounds and little noise, desolate, hidden from people, appropriate for seclusion, he is still called one dwelling with a partner. For what reason? Because craving is his partner, and he has not abandoned it. Therefore, he is called one dwelling with a partner. Stop here for a moment. So here you see, if a monk is infatuated still with the sense objects, then he is bound by them wherever he goes. Because he craves for them, he will always be thinking of them. So he's always thinking of them. The mind doesn't stop chattering. It's always as though somebody talking to him inside. That's why he's called dwelling with a partner. The Buddha continued, Nikaya, there are forms cognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk does not seek delight in them, does not welcome them, and does not remain holding to them, delight ceases. When there is no delight, there is no infatuation. When there is no infatuation, there is no bondage. Released from the fetter of delight, Nikaya, a monk is called a lone dweller. Similarly, for sounds cognizable by the ear, odors, taste, touch, thoughts that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, etc. If a monk seeks delight in them, then he is bound to them. So, if a monk does not seek delight in them, he is not bound by them. So he is called a lone dweller. Nikaya, even though a monk who dwells thus lives in the vicinity of a village, associating with monks and nuns, with male and female lay followers, with kings and royal ministers, with sectarian teachers and their disciples, he is still called a lone dweller. For what reason? Because craving is his partner and he has abandoned it. Therefore he is called a lone dweller. That's the end of the sutta. So sometimes a lot of people, a lot of monks, they don't understand the suttas. Sometimes they think the outward renunciation is important, or making a show of it. But that is not so important as the inner practice. Inner practice, you don't have to go and cultivate all the ascetic practices to show that you are such a good monk. We have to only to answer to ourselves. If our mind is clean, that is a good monk, not one who appears to be a good monk. Just like here, I see that sometimes a monk appears to be dwelling alone, but he's not actually dwelling alone. He goes everywhere with craving. Now this is the next sutta, 35.64. Then the Venerable Nikaya approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Venerable Sir, it would be good if the Blessed One would teach me Dhamma in brief, so that having heard the Dhamma from the Blessed One, I might dwell alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent and resolute. Stop here for a moment. You see, quite often the Buddha, because the Buddha encouraged his monks, after 5 years of monkhood, the first 5 years of monkhood, a monk is supposed to dwell with a teacher that can teach him the suttas and the Vinaya and traditions. But the most important is the suttas and the Vinaya. After 5 years, having known the sutta and the Vinaya, he's encouraged to go off and practice alone, stay in the wild, stay in the cave and all that alone, because that's the ideal condition for practicing. That's why here, remember Nikaya says, he wants to dwell alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent and resolute. And the Buddha said, Nikaya, there are forms cognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk seeks delight in them, welcomes them and remains holding to them, delight arises. With the arising of delight, I say, Nikaya, there is the arising of suffering. There are Mikajala sounds cognizable by the ear, odors, taste, touch, and thoughts that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, etc. If a monk seeks delight in them, delight in them, welcomes them, and remains holding to them, delight arises. With the arising of delight, Mikajala, there is the arising of suffering. So, I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, the six sense objects that impinge, make contact with our six sense doors, if we take delight in them, and that is a cause for the arising of suffering, because everything in the world is impermanent. When you are happy with something, you attach to it, later it will change. It's the nature of the world. So when it changes, there's a cause for suffering. There are Mikajala, forms cognizable by the eye, that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk does not seek delight in them, does not welcome them, and does not remain holding to them, delight ceases. With the cessation of delight, I say, comes the cessation of suffering. Similarly, Mikajala, there are sounds cognizable by the ear, odors, taste, touch, thoughts, that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, etc. If a monk does not seek delight in them, delight ceases. With the cessation of delight, I say, comes the cessation of suffering. Then the Venerable Mikajala, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, keeping him on his right, he departed. Then dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute, the Venerable Mikajala, by realizing it for himself with direct knowledge in this very life, entered and dwelt in the unsurpassed goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the household life into homelessness. He directly knew, destroyed his birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. And the Venerable Mikajala became one of the Arahants. So you see this teaching, the Buddha is basically telling him that all the things in the world that are lovely, enticing, pleasing, they give you suffering. So don't cling to them. Let go. So if a person practices the holy path, he gives up worldly happiness, and he goes within himself. When we go within ourselves, then we slowly begin to experience a different kind of happiness. It's totally different from worldly happiness. Worldly happiness gives you happiness for a very short time, does not last. But the happiness within is very hard to get, but when you can get it, it's long-lasting. It lasts. That's why, like for example, the Buddha said that those monks who attain the second jhana, when they are reborn in the heaven, the second jhana heaven, their mind itself gives them so much happiness that every day they say sukha, 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 just like on ecstasy pill. And that is for millions of years, millions and millions of years, not just for a short. But because it's difficult to get that type of happiness, and most people don't know about that type of happiness, that's why most people are not willing to renounce worldly happiness. Worldly happiness, they think they can see here and now. Why want to chase after something that you cannot see? So that's the way foolish people think. They think they don't have the foresight, they don't think so long, they don't think so far. The next sutta, 35.68. This sutta is about Venerable Samyutta. He asked the Buddha, Venerable Sir, it is said, the world. In what way, Venerable Sir, might there be the world, or the description of the world? And the Buddha said, where there is the I, Samyutta, where there are forms, I consciousness, things to be cognized by I consciousness, there the world exists, or the description of the world. Similarly, where there is the ear, sounds, ear consciousness, there the world exists. And similarly, where there is the nose, there are smells, etc., and the body, touch, etc., and mind and thoughts, etc. Whereas there is no I samadhi, no forms, no I consciousness, no things to be cognized by I consciousness. There the world does not exist, or any description of the world. Similarly, where there is no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, there the world does not exist, nor any description of the world. So here the Buddha is saying that the world is within our six senses. And you have the six senses, and you have the six sense consciousness, and you have everything in the world is inside the six senses and six sense consciousness. The next sutta, 35.69. On one occasion, the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Upasena were dwelling at Rajagaha in the cool grove in the snake's hood grotto. On that occasion, a viper had fallen on the Venerable Upasena's body. Then the Venerable Upasena addressed the monks thus: "Come friends, lift this body of mine onto the bed and carry it outside before it is scattered right here like a handful of chaff." Stop here for a moment. This Venerable Upasena, it seems, this very poisonous snake had fallen on his body. I don't know whether it bit him or not. But suddenly he realized that he was going to die. So he asked the other monks to carry his body outside. We see, he says, before he's scattered here. Because he has attained, he must have become an Arahant. And his Daki power is so great. When he dies, his body can just disappear. Probably one way of explaining it could be that he has been meditating on the fire element, so that when he dies, he can just use the fire to burn the body completely until there's no trace of it. When this was said, the Venerable Sariputta said to the Venerable Upasena, "We do not see any alteration in the Venerable Upasena's body, nor any change in his faculties. Yet the Venerable Upasena says, 'Come friends, lift this body of mine onto the bed and carry it outside before it is scattered right here like a handful of chaff.'" Stop here for a moment. So Venerable Sariputta says, your body seems perfectly alright. Why do you say you're going to die? And then he replied, "Friend Sariputta, for one who thinks I am the eye, or the eye is mine, or I am the ear, or the ear is mine, etc., there might be alteration of the body or a change of the faculties. My friend Sariputta, it does not occur to me, I am the eye, or the eye is mine, or I am the ear, or the ear is mine, or I am the nose, etc., the tongue, the body, the mind. So why should there be any alteration in my body, or any change in my faculties?" And Sariputta said, "It must be because I-making, mind-making, and the underlying tendency to conceit have been thoroughly uprooted in the Venerable Upasena for a long time, that it does not occur to him, I am the eye, or the eye is mine, or I am the ear, or the ear is mine, or I am the nose, tongue, body, and mind." Then those monks lifted the Venerable Upasena's body onto the bed and carried it outside. Then the Venerable Upasena's body was scattered right there, just like a handful of chaff. So his body just disappeared. So here the Venerable Sariputta says that it must be that he has totally rooted out this conceit, this ego, this selfhood in him a long time already. Then he thoroughly does not have any trace of self or ego left. That's why even when he's going to die, his body does not change at all. It's not affected. He's totally sort of, because he doesn't see the body as himself, so the mind does not affect the body in that sense. Let's stop here for tonight. Many of these suttas in this Salayatana Samyutta, they are similar to the Khanda Samyutta, so I didn't bother to read them. That's why I've gone through so many suttas, bypassed so many suttas. I think to ask. There's one sutta where the Buddha says, the Buddha was asked, this is a Sakapantha Sutta in the Digha Nikaya. The Buddha was asked by Sakadeva Raja, humans and devas, we like to be at peace. You don't like to quarrel and fight and all that. But even though we like peace, yet very often there is fighting, there is war. And I asked the Buddha why. And the Buddha says it's because of two things. Covetousness or greed and jealousy. We are greedy for things, and when we see that other people have and we don't have, we are jealous. So because of jealousy, it's a cause of conflict. And then he asked the Buddha, why is there covetousness and jealousy in the world? And the Buddha said, because something like, I don't remember exactly, like because of desire. And why is there desire? He said because of thinking, or like and dislike. Like and dislike, then you have desire. Then he asked why is that like and dislike? Then the Buddha said because of thinking. And then why is it that people like to think? And the Buddha said there are two kinds of happiness. One kind of happiness which most people experience is the happiness from thinking. We get happiness from thinking. That's why some people like to daydream, like to fantasize. Oh, if I'm rich, I'll do this and I'll do that and all these things. So we get pleasure from thinking. But the Buddha says there's another type of happiness devoid of thinking. And that is a higher happiness. And that is experienced when you attain the second jhana and above. Second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. Without having to think, you are so happy. So unless you have attained that happiness, the higher happiness, devoid of thinking, you will only know the happiness of thinking. So that's why you keep thinking, because it gives you pleasure. Just like worldly people, we only know worldly happiness. For example, we only know sensual pleasure. We only know the happiness of eating good food. We only know the happiness of going to see a good show and all these things. So because that is the only type of happiness we know, we keep indulging in that type of happiness. It's only one day when you think it gives you enough of suffering already, and you are willing to give it up. And when you give it up and you walk the spiritual path, then you experience a higher type of happiness which is lasting. Then only you realize that is higher happiness. Then you don't want to experience the lower happiness anymore. The Buddha said just like a person, when he was a human being in this world, he was rich and enjoyed worldly pleasures, but at the same time he did a lot of good deeds. So after he passed away, he was reborn in heaven. When he was reborn in heaven, surrounded by all the heavenly maidens, he was enjoying himself even more. So when he was in heaven, he looked down on earth. Then he saw his son or his friend or enjoying the happiness that he used to enjoy. Then the Buddha says, does he envy them? Does he want to come down and enjoy that happiness that he enjoyed before? No. Why? Because he enjoys a higher happiness now. So he doesn't want to enjoy a lower type of happiness. So unless you have experienced a higher happiness, you don't know anything better. I think that is the best. Sometimes the Buddha gives a simile of the dung beetle. The dung beetle only knows the dung as his food. I think that's the best food in the world. Doesn't want to eat anything else. That's the best food. Yeah. Somebody transfer married?